The relentless onslaught of rain hammered against the panoramic windows of Montgomery Financial Group's prestigious headquarters, a symphony of urban gloom mirroring the tight knot in Jennifer Hayes' stomach. She swiftly gathered her belongings, her mind already a frantic whirlwind of the evening's complex choreography. 6-year-old Tyler needed to be picked up from after-school care, followed by a dash to the grocery store, then homework assistance, dinner preparation, a bath, and finally, bedtime stories. This mental checklist, a relentless litany of duties, was the constant companion of a single mother striving for success as an executive assistant in one of Boston's most formidable investment firms. Her worn leather bag, a faithful companion bearing the scars of countless daily battles, was slung over her shoulder as she practically sprinted toward the elevator bank. Already 10 minutes behind schedule, every tick of the clock was a tiny hammer striking her precarious budget. The daycare imposed a punitive $5 fee for every minute past 6 p.m., and Jennifer simply couldn't absorb another late charge this month. Tyler's recurring asthma, with its never-ending stream of medical bills and medication costs, had already stretched her finances to their absolute, agonizing limit. It wasn't until she was halfway home, bumper to bumper in the soul-crushing Friday evening traffic on the Mass Pike, that a cold dread snaked its way into her chest, tightening around her heart. Asterisk her laptop. Asterisk the sleek, silver MacBook, containing the intricate presentation she had meticulously crafted over 3 grueling weeks for Monday's utterly crucial client meeting, sat abandoned on her desk on the 42nd floor. Jennifer's hands tightened their white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel of her 12-year-old Honda Civic as a wave of paralyzing panic washed over her. She couldn't possibly turn back. The daycare doors locked at 6:30 sharp, and her dashboard clock mocked her with a flashing 6:15. Yet, that presentation wasn't merely data and slides. It was months of unremitting effort, countless late nights stolen after Tyler finally drifted to sleep. Every ounce of her dwindling energy poured into proving herself worthy of the senior assistant position she so desperately coveted. That promotion, that coveted title, promised a life-altering $20,000 raise. Enough to finally escape their cramped, suffocating one-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. Enough to secure better health care for Tyler, to soothe the constant anxieties about his breathing. Enough, perhaps, to finally, truly breathe herself. Her phone buzzed, vibrating against the console. Another text from Melissa at Little Scholars Daycare. Asterisk running late. 5 minutes away. Asterisk Jennifer typed back a quick, breathless reply at a red light, her stomach churning with a potent mix of anxiety and exhaustion. She pulled into the daycare parking lot at 6:28 p.m., abandoning her car and sprinting through the downpour, rain plastering her hair to her face. Tyler sat patiently in the corner of the lobby, his small backpack beside him, crayon in hand, meticulously coloring. He possessed the quiet, almost resigned patience of a child who had learned far too young that his mother always arrived, just sometimes a little later than everyone else's. "Mama!" His face, usually so solemn, erupted into a radiant smile when he spotted her, and Jennifer's heart simultaneously soared with love and broke with a profound ache. He deserved so much more, a childhood unburdened by her struggles, a world she often felt incapable of providing. "Hey, buddy," she murmured, kneeling down to pull him into a fierce hug, breathing in the comforting scent of his strawberry shampoo. "How was your day? I made you a picture." Tyler proudly held up a crayon drawing, a vibrant tableau of 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a magnificent rainbow. "That's you and me when we go to the beach someday." Jennifer blinked back the sudden stinging in her eyes. They had never been to the beach. A vacation, even a modest one, was an unimaginable luxury, a financial impossibility she couldn't afford, nor could she sacrifice the precious work hours it would demand. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Absolutely beautiful," she managed, her voice thick. "I'll hang it on the fridge the second we get home." The evening unfolded in its usual, predictable rhythm of charming chaos. Chicken nuggets and steamed broccoli for dinner because it was swift, simple, and crucially, Tyler would actually eat it. Homework sessions at their tiny kitchen table, Jennifer's mind a steel trap, desperately trying to lock away the haunting image of her abandoned laptop. Bath time was a riot of splashing and Tyler's infectious, unadulterated laughter, momentarily chasing away the shadows of her worry. 2 chapters of their current book, a captivating tale of a brave knight and a friendly dragon, brought the day to a gentle close. By 8:30 p.m., Tyler was finally asleep, his small chest rising and falling with the peaceful regularity of a child safe in his mother's care. Jennifer stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, the stark reality of their lives laid bare. Tyler occupied the single twin bed, his space, his sanctuary. She had a mattress on the floor beside it, her own humble resting place. She allowed herself a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated worry. Monday's presentation wasn't just important. It was critical. Her boss, the formidable Mr. Montgomery himself, had specifically requested that she lead the client pitch. It was a test, she knew, a trial by fire to assess her readiness for the responsibilities of the senior position. Without her laptop, she had nothing. The presentation, her intellectual property, her potential future wasn't backed up to the cloud. She'd meant to set that up, had promised herself she would, but had never found a spare moment between work, Tyler, and the relentless demands of survival. She could go back to the office early Monday morning, but the client meeting was irrevocably scheduled for 8:30 a.m. There was simply no way she'd make it. She collapsed onto the sagging couch in their tiny living room, a wave of crushing exhaustion and utter desperation washing over her. She had fought so incredibly hard to reach this point. After Tyler's father had vanished from their lives 2 weeks before his birth, Jennifer had, with almost unimaginable grit, clawed her way through every single obstacle fate had thrown her way. She had earned her business degree online, meticulously piecing it together late at night, all while working full-time and caring for a demanding newborn. She had volunteered for every extra shift, mastered every new skill, made herself utterly indispensable to the firm. And now it might all unravel, all her sacrifices rendered meaningless, because she had forgotten her laptop. The sharp, authoritative knock on her apartment door at 9:15 p.m. made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. Jennifer froze, every nerve ending screaming. Nobody visited her. She had no family in Boston, and few friends who had the time or capacity for a struggling single mother. Another knock, firmer, more insistent this time, echoed through the thin walls. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole, her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the dim, flickering hallway of her rundown apartment building, rain still dripping from the expensive, impeccably tailored charcoal suit that clung to his broad shoulders, was Christopher Montgomery. The Christopher Montgomery, billionaire CEO of Montgomery Financial Group, her boss's boss's boss, the man whose chiseled face routinely graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, who owned 3 opulent homes and a magnificent yacht, who moved in social and financial circles so utterly removed from her meager reality they might as well be inhabitants of different planets. And he was standing there, holding her laptop. Jennifer's hands trembled as she fumbled with the locks, acutely, painfully aware of her faded yoga pants and the oversized MIT sweatshirt, a cherished relic from her scholarship days, that swallowed her small frame. She opened the door a hesitant crack, a torrent of confusion and mortification flooding through her in equal, overwhelming measure. "Mr. Montgomery?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper, a strained, disbelieving gasp. Christopher Montgomery was taller, more commanding in person than he ever appeared in photographs, with dark hair silvered elegantly at the temples and eyes the color of cold, polished steel. At 42, he possessed an almost devastating charisma, the kind that powerful, supremely intelligent men often exuded. But it was the unexpected, almost tender gentleness in his expression that shocked her most, a disarming softness that belied his formidable reputation. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that managed to sound warm despite the rain-soaked chill clinging to him. "I believe you forgot something rather important." Jennifer stared at the laptop in his hands as if it were a vivid hallucination, a trick of her overtired mind. "How did you?" "I was working late when I noticed it on your desk," he explained, his gaze subtly flickering past her into the small, dimly lit apartment. I remembered you mentioning the presentation during this week's executive briefing. I thought you might need it over the weekend. 1,000 dizzying questions raced through Jennifer's mind, but the most pressing, the most audacious, escaped before she could possibly censor it. You know where I live? Something complex flickered deep within Christopher's steel-gray eyes, a fleeting, almost vulnerable emotion. HR records, he stated, a hint of apology in his tone. I hope you don't mind. I merely wanted to ensure you had everything you needed for Monday's success. Jennifer reached for the laptop with shaking hands, their fingers brushing briefly, accidentally, in the exchange. An electric current, sharp and unexpected, seemed to spark between them, a jolt that startled her to her core. She pulled back quickly, clutching the computer to her chest like a precious, life-saving artifact. Thank you, she managed, her voice still a shaky whisper. I can't possibly tell you what this means to me. The presentation is excellent work, Christopher interrupted, his eyes holding hers. I reviewed it this afternoon. Your analysis of the European market trends was particularly insightful. Jennifer's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. The CEO, the Christopher Montgomery, had actually read her work, had actually looked at the meticulous research she had compiled. The sheer improbability of it stole her breath. Mama? Tyler's sleepy voice, soft and disoriented, called from their shared bedroom. Who's there? Jennifer's eyes widened in a fresh wave of panic. I'm so sorry. I need to. Of course, Christopher said quickly, already stepping back, granting her space. But his gaze had shifted, something unreadable, deeply personal, crossing his features. Your son. Yes. He had a nightmare last week, so he's been. Jennifer trailed off, suddenly unsure why she was offering such intimate details of her life to this man. Thank you again, Mr. Montgomery. This was incredibly kind. Christopher Montgomery looked at her for a long, lingering moment, and Jennifer could have sworn she saw something akin to profound loneliness hidden within those steel-gray eyes. Then, with a subtle shift, he nodded once, his professional mask effortlessly sliding back into place. Have a good weekend, Miss Hayes. I'll see you Monday morning. Jennifer closed the door, the click of the lock reverberating through the small apartment, and leaned against the cold wood, her heart still pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She could hear his footsteps retreating down the hallway, the distinctive, expensive creak of his shoes on the worn linoleum. Through the thin walls, she distinctly heard a car engine roar to life, undoubtedly something German and worth more than she would earn in 5 years. Christopher Montgomery had delivered her laptop, personally. The billionaire CEO, the titan of industry, had driven across the sprawling, rain-slicked city to bring her laptop to her apartment in Dorchester. Nothing, absolutely nothing, about that made any sense in her carefully ordered, meticulously structured world. The weekend passed in a blur of frantic presentation rehearsals and an ever-mounting cascade of questions Jennifer found herself utterly unable to answer. Why, truly, had Christopher Montgomery driven all the way across Boston to deliver her laptop? HR records, she knew with certainty, did not include home addresses. She had filled out those forms herself, deliberately listing only an emergency contact number, and he had personally reviewed her presentation. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm, a man whose time was measured in millions, had taken time out of his impossibly busy schedule to read work prepared by an executive assistant. Sunday evening, after Tyler had finally drifted off to sleep, Jennifer stood before her bathroom mirror, practicing her pitch for the 100th time, her voice a low, steady hum. Dark circles, stubborn and defiant, shadowed her eyes despite the concealer she'd meticulously applied. Her best suit, a conservative navy blazer and pencil skirt purchased at a carefully chosen consignment shop, hung on the back of the door, freshly pressed and ready for tomorrow's make-or-break meeting. She kept returning to Christopher Montgomery's expression, the fleeting vulnerability she'd glimpsed when Tyler had called out. Something profoundly human had shifted in those steel-gray eyes, a softness she hadn't expected from a man whose formidable reputation was built on ruthless business acumen and ice-cold negotiations. Forbes had famously dubbed him the Shark of Wall Street. Business Insider had published an exposé on his seemingly perfect, unblemished life. Self-made billionaire, prolific philanthropist, one of the world's most eligible bachelors, constantly photographed with a dazzling array of models and actresses. Yet he had stood in her shabby hallway, looking, for a fleeting moment, almost human. Monday morning arrived with the harsh, mechanical precision of a well-oiled machine. Jennifer dropped Tyler at daycare by 7:15 a.m., made it to the office by 7:45 a.m., and was meticulously setting up the conference room when her direct supervisor, Patricia Wu, swept in with her usual air of controlled chaos and barely contained stress. The Henderson Group representatives just arrived early, Patricia announced, her voice tight with barely suppressed stress, already running through her hair with a gloved hand. They're already in the executive lounge. Mr. Montgomery wants to begin in 10 minutes instead of 30. Jennifer's stomach plummeted, but she merely nodded calmly, her professional facade firmly in place. I'm ready. You'd better be, Patricia said, though her tone, for once, wasn't unkind. This is a $40 million account, Jennifer. The senior assistant position depends entirely on landing it. The next 2 hours unfolded like a fever dream, a heightened reality. Jennifer delivered her presentation flawlessly, her voice clear and confident, every word resonating with authority. She fielded complex questions about market volatility and intricate investment strategies with the hard-won confidence born from weeks of meticulous, solitary research. The Henderson Group representatives, 3 stern, impeccably dressed men in their late 60s, nodded approvingly throughout, their expressions slowly thawing. But it was Christopher Montgomery's constant, unwavering presence that unnerved her most profoundly. He sat silently at the head of the polished mahogany table, saying little, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with a strange awareness. Every time their eyes met across the vast expanse of the table, that same unexpected electric current from Friday night sparked between them, undeniable and unsettling. When the meeting finally concluded with firm handshakes and promises to sign contracts by the end of the week, Patricia actually smiled. It was a rare, almost unprecedented occurrence. Excellent work, Jennifer. Truly exceptional. Thank you, Jennifer said, already beginning to gather her materials, desperate to escape Christopher's unervingly focused scrutiny, to break free from the invisible tether that seemed to connect them. Miss Hayes, a moment. His deep voice, calm and commanding, stopped her just as her hand reached for the conference room door. Patricia, ever perceptive, left with a knowing, almost conspiratorial look that sent a fresh wave of heat flushing into Jennifer's cheeks. Jennifer turned slowly to face Christopher Montgomery, alone in the opulent conference room with him for the first time since that bizarre, intimate encounter in her apartment. Sir, she began, her voice carefully modulated, strictly professional. He stood, moving around the massive table with the casual, inherent grace of someone utterly comfortable in his own skin, utterly at ease with his own power. That was impressive. You have a natural talent for reading clients and adapting your approach with remarkable finesse. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery, Jennifer replied, her voice remaining professionally neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs with a frantic, insistent rhythm. Christopher, he corrected quietly, stepping closer. When it's just us, please call me Christopher. Jennifer's eyes widened fractionally. I don't think that would be appropriate, sir. A slight, enigmatic smile tugged at the corners of his lips, a flash of something surprisingly boyish. Probably not, he conceded. But I'm rather tired of formality. Before she could respond, he continued, his expression growing serious, the smile vanishing. I wanted to apologize for showing up at your home unannounced. It was presumptuous, and I hope you can forgive the intrusion. You saved my career, Jennifer blurted out honestly, the words tumbling forth without conscious thought. Without that laptop, I couldn't have prepared properly. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. Christopher's voice was firm, unequivocal. Your work speaks for itself, Miss Hayes. I simply returned your property. At 9 o'clock on a Friday night, in the pouring rain, to Dorchester. Jennifer found an unexpected surge of courage in her confusion, a boldness she hadn't known she possessed. Billionaire CEOs don't typically make personal deliveries, Mr. Montgomery. Something flickered in Christopher's eyes again, that same vulnerable shadow she'd glimpsed on Friday night, a crack in his formidable armor. Maybe this particular CEO had his reasons, he murmured, his voice softer now. The air between them suddenly felt charged, dangerously so, thick with unspoken possibilities. Jennifer knew, with every rational fiber of her being, that she should leave, should maintain a professional distance, should absolutely not engage in whatever this unsettling, electrifying connection was. But she heard herself asking, compelled by an irresistible force. What reasons? Christopher was quiet for a long moment, his steel-gray gaze studying her with an intensity she couldn't decipher, an unspoken question in their depths. Your son, he said finally, his voice carefully measured. How old is he? The question caught her completely off guard. Tyler's 6. Why? I heard him call for you, he explained, his hands sliding casually into his pockets. His posture was less commanding now, almost uncertain, more human. Through the door. It reminded me of someone. Jennifer waited, sensing that he needed to continue, that a dam was about to break. I had a son once, Christopher said quietly, the words seeming to cost him something profound, a deep emotional toll. Daniel. He would have been 7 this year. The chilling finality of the past tense hit Jennifer like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Mr. Montgomery, I'm so. He died when he was 3. Leukemia. Christopher's voice remained steady, a testament to immense self-control. But Jennifer saw the raw grief etched in the subtle lines around his eyes, a permanent scar. My wife, my ex-wife, and I divorced 6 months after we buried him. Some marriages, it seems, don't survive that kind of unimaginable loss. Jennifer's throat tightened with a wave of overwhelming sympathy. She thought about Tyler, about the sheer, visceral terror she felt every time he suffered an asthma attack, about the waking nightmares of something unthinkable happening to him. She couldn't even begin to imagine actually living through that loss, enduring that kind of devastation. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I can't imagine. No one can, Christopher said, his gaze meeting hers, raw and startlingly honest. Until they do. He paused, his eyes moving to the laptop still clutched in her hands. I saw your presentation file name when I found the laptop. Tyler's Future Fund. You named it after your son. Jennifer flushed, a fresh wave of embarrassment washing over her. She hadn't realized anyone, least of all him, would ever see that deeply personal detail. The promotion, the raise, is for him, to give him opportunities one never had. You went to MIT, Christopher countered, a faint, almost challenging smile touching his lips. Full scholarship, according to your resume. That's not exactly lacking opportunity, Jennifer. I grew up in foster care, Jennifer said, the words spilling out before she could stop herself. She rarely, if ever, talked about her past, never gave people reasons to pity her, never revealed her vulnerability. But something about Christopher's unexpected openness, his raw honesty, demanded a similar truthfulness in return. 12 different homes between the ages of 4 and 18. MIT was my escape route, my lifeline, but I still worked 3 jobs to cover expenses the scholarship didn't. Tyler's father left before he was born. I've been doing this alone for 6 years. Christopher's expression softened, melting into something that looked remarkably like profound admiration. You're remarkable. I'm a survivor, Jennifer corrected, her voice firm. There's a difference. Is there? Christopher moved closer, his presence warm and enveloping, close enough that she could discern the subtle, expensive scent of his cologne, a quietly masculine fragrance. I think remarkable people often don't recognize their own strength, Jennifer. Jennifer's breath hitched in her throat. This was dangerous territory, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. He was her boss, a man of impossible wealth and power. Billionaires didn't pursue single mothers from Dorchester. This was a fantasy, A fleeting, dangerous illusion, not her stark, unforgiving reality. "I should go," she said, taking an involuntary step backward, creating a sliver of space between them. "Tyler's daycare. Has you scheduled to pick him up at 6, I imagine?" Christopher's lips curved in a slight, knowing smile. "It's barely noon, Jennifer." The sound of her first name, spoken by him, sent a ripple of shivers down her spine, a sensation both forbidden and thrilling. "Mr. Montgomery," he continued, his voice softer now, an invitation hanging in the air. "Have lunch with me." The invitation hung heavy between them, impossible and yet undeniably tempting. Jennifer shook her head, her practical, rational brain screaming at her. "I can't. People would talk. It would be complicated." "It would be complicated," Christopher finished, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know, but I find myself not caring about complications for the first time in 4 years." Jennifer's mind raced, a dizzying flurry of warnings and desires. This was utterly insane. CEOs didn't date their assistants. Billionaires didn't fall for single mothers struggling to make rent. These kinds of stories didn't happen in real life, not to people like her. But the way Christopher looked at her, like she was someone genuinely worth seeing, worth knowing, worth pursuing, made her want to believe in impossible things, just for a moment. "One lunch," he said quietly, his voice a gentle persuasion. "Off-site, completely private. Just 2 people having a conversation." Why? Jennifer needed to understand, needed a logical anchor in this illogical situation. "Why me?" Christopher considered the question carefully, his eyes distant for a moment, then returning to hers, clear and direct. "Because when you opened your door Friday night, you didn't see my money or my reputation or my company," he explained, his voice low and sincere. "You simply saw a man bringing you something you needed. And when your son called for you, you didn't try to impress me or extend the conversation. You did what any good mother would do. You protected him and prioritized his needs, without hesitation." He paused, a profound weariness coloring his tone. "In my world, Jennifer, genuine people are rarer than you might think." Jennifer, against every rational protest her brain conjured, agreed to lunch, though every cell in her body screamed that she was making a catastrophic mistake. They drove to a small, unassuming Italian restaurant in the North End, a charming, bustling neighborhood far removed from the sterile glass towers of the financial district where Christopher might be instantly recognized. He drove them in a deliberately understated black sedan, still undeniably expensive, but not the attention-grabbing sports car she'd unconsciously expected. Over steaming plates of pasta and a rich, ruby-red wine that probably cost more than her entire weekly grocery budget, they talked. They really talked, in a way Jennifer hadn't experienced since before Tyler was born. Christopher asked about her challenging childhood, her hard-won education, her fervent dreams for Tyler's future. He listened with a genuine, unwavering interest, not the polite, fleeting attention people usually offered before deftly changing the subject to themselves. In return, he spoke of Daniel, sharing fragmented, cherished memories of the little boy who had adored dinosaurs and stubbornly refused to eat anything green, about the 18 agonizing months of treatments and endless hospital stays, the desperate, whispered prayers that went unanswered, about the moment he had held his son's small hand and felt it go utterly still. "I threw myself into work afterward," Christopher admitted, swirling the wine in his glass, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the restaurant's cozy walls. 14 16-hour days. Anything at all to avoid going home to an empty, echoing house. My marriage was already over, in truth. We just made it official. I told myself I was fine. That success, that empire was enough. But it wasn't, Jennifer said softly, her voice filled with understanding. "No." Christopher met her gaze, his eyes shadowed with old pain. "I've spent 4 years building an empire and feeling absolutely nothing. No joy, no fulfillment. And then I saw your laptop on that desk Friday afternoon, and I thought about you rushing home to your son, about the sheer panic you'd feel realizing you'd forgotten it. Something shifted inside me. I wanted to help, not because it was the right corporate move, not because of any obligation, but because I simply wanted to see you relieved instead of worried, happy instead of frantic. Jennifer's heart raced. A hummingbird caught in her chest. Christopher, I need to be completely honest with you, she began, her voice earnest. I can't afford complications. Tyler is my absolute priority. I need this job. I need the promotion. If people at the office found out about this, they won't, Christopher said firmly, cutting her off, his hand reaching across the table to cover hers. A warm, steady weight. I'll make sure of it. But Jennifer, I'm not asking you to choose between your son and whatever this might become. I would never, ever ask that of you. Then what are you asking? She whispered, her eyes searching his. Christopher squeezed her hand, his touch sending a jolt of pure electricity through her entire body. I'm asking for a chance to see if what I felt Friday night was real, he said, his voice soft, vulnerable. To know if you felt it, too. Jennifer's throat tightened, a lump forming there. She had felt it, that inexplicable pull, that profound sense of recognition, a connection that transcended their vastly different worlds. But she had learned long ago that fairy tales didn't come true for foster kids turned single mothers. Men like Christopher Montgomery didn't rescue women like her, didn't fall for their complicated lives. I felt it, she admitted quietly, her voice barely audible. But I'm terrified of what it means. The weeks that followed were a testament to secrecy and stolen moments. Christopher took Jennifer to dinner at charming, obscure restaurants outside Boston, to quiet museums after hours, their footsteps echoing through hushed galleries, and to a private, secluded beach on Cape Cod where Tyler built magnificent sand castles while Christopher, surprisingly knowledgeable, taught him about the mysteries of the tides and the fascinating creatures of marine life. He never pushed for more than Jennifer was ready to give, never made her feel as though she owed him anything for his kindness or attention. At work, they maintained an impeccable, impenetrable wall of professionalism. Jennifer received her well-deserved promotion to senior executive assistant, complete with the promised raise, based entirely on merit. Christopher ensured the decision came through Patricia and the HR department with no hint of favoritism, no whisper of impropriety. Jennifer, with the newfound financial stability, finally moved Tyler into a better, sunnier apartment in Cambridge, close to excellent schools and, most importantly, with his very own bedroom. But privately, in the stolen moments and quiet evenings, Jennifer was falling deeply, irrevocably in love, and it terrified her to her core. Christopher was nothing like she had expected from the intimidating shark of Wall Street. He was incredibly patient with Tyler, genuinely interested in a 6-year-old's rambling stories about school and Pokemon cards. He was thoughtful, remembering that Jennifer preferred herbal tea to coffee and that Tyler was severely allergic to peanuts. He was vulnerable in ways that broke her heart, speaking openly about his son Daniel and the profound, lingering guilt he still carried. 3 months into their carefully guarded secret relationship, everything changed with the sudden, shocking force of a detonating bomb. Jennifer was working late, helping Christopher prepare for a major acquisition, when Patricia knocked softly on his office door. Her face was pale, her expression strained and deeply worried. I'm sorry to interrupt, Christopher, Patricia began, her voice hushed. But there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Christopher frowned, a line appearing between his brows. I don't have any appointments scheduled. A woman, stunning and impeccably dressed, appeared from behind Patricia, and Jennifer's blood ran cold. She was tall, with cascades of perfectly styled blonde hair, clad in a designer suit that probably cost more than Jennifer's monthly rent. But it was the desperate, fragile hope in her eyes that made Jennifer's stomach drop with a sickening lurch. Chris, the woman said, her voice trembling with an exquisite blend of fear and elation. I need to talk to you. It's about Daniel. Christopher stood so abruptly that his executive chair rolled backward, colliding with the wall with a hollow thud. Victoria, what are you? I know this is impossible, Victoria interrupted, tears already streaming freely down her perfect, unblemished face, heedless of her carefully applied makeup. But I saw him, Chris. I saw our son. He's alive. The words hung in the air like a poised, deadly bomb. waiting for the precise moment to detonate. Jennifer watched, transfixed, as Christopher's face drained of all color, watched him grip the edge of his desk with white knuckles as if the entire world had suddenly tilted sideways, threatening to throw him off balance. "That's not possible," he said hoarsely, his voice raw with disbelief and terror. "Daniel died. We buried him." "I thought so too," Victoria sobbed, her voice cracking. "But I saw him at a clinic in Cambridge 2 days ago. The same birthmark on his left shoulder. The same cowlick, the same everything. He's 7 years old, Chris. Exactly the age Daniel would be right now." Jennifer's mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the impossible. This couldn't be real. Children didn't simply come back from the dead. But Victoria's anguish was utterly genuine, raw and palpable. And Christopher looked like someone had reached into his chest and brutally squeezed his heart, threatening to crush it. "Where?" Christopher demanded, his voice hardening with an almost frantic urgency, his initial shock giving way to a desperate need for facts. "What clinic?" Victoria named a children's medical facility that Jennifer recognized instantly. It was a mere 3 blocks from her new apartment in Cambridge, the very place where she had taken Tyler for his last asthma checkup. "I followed them," Victoria continued, her voice gaining a frantic energy. "The boy and his mother. They got into a car, but I got the license plate. Chris, I hired a private investigator. The boy's name is Lucas Brennan. He's been living with a couple who adopted him as an infant." Christopher swayed visibly on his feet. Jennifer moved instinctively, a quiet, protective instinct, to steady him, but he didn't seem to notice her touch, his world utterly consumed by the staggering revelation. "An infant?" His voice was barely a whisper, laced with profound confusion. "Victoria, Daniel was 3 when he was supposedly buried." Jennifer reminded her, a logical, chilling question hanging in the air. "But what if something happened at the hospital?" Victoria finished, her voice rising in pitch, teetering on the edge of hysteria. "What if there was a mistake or worse? What if someone took him?" The implications were staggering, horrifying beyond measure. Jennifer thought about the labyrinthine complexities of the medical system, about the inherent chaos of terminal illness wards, about the terrifying possibility of unthinkable errors or, even more sinister, unspeakable crimes. "I need proof," Christopher said, his voice hardening into the steely, unyielding tone Jennifer recognized from high-stakes board meetings. "DNA tests, medical records, something concrete, undeniable. The investigator is working on it," Victoria assured him, her voice filled with desperate conviction. "But Chris, I know my son. I carried him for 9 months. I knew every inch of him. That boy is Daniel." Jennifer watched, a silent, heartbroken observer, as Christopher's carefully constructed world crumbled in real time before her eyes. She saw the fragile hope warring with raw terror in his gaze, saw the 4 years of meticulously suppressed grief suddenly threatened by the terrifying, miraculous possibility that his son might still be alive, stolen, living with strangers. "I should go," Jennifer said quietly, her voice barely a breath, as she began to gather her scattered belongings, an instinct for self-preservation kicking in. Christopher's eyes snapped to her, his gaze disoriented, as if he had completely forgotten she was even there, forgotten her existence amidst this personal apocalypse. For a fleeting, agonizing moment, she saw confusion in his eyes, as if he couldn't quite place her, couldn't fit her into the nightmarish context of this impossible revelation. "Jennifer, you need time with Victoria to process this," Jennifer said, her heart breaking for him even as she managed to keep her voice steady. "Professional. I'll reschedule your morning meetings." She left before he could respond, before Victoria, lost in her own storm of emotions, could even think to ask who she was, before the searing tears burning behind Jennifer's own eyes could finally fall. In the elevator, descending swiftly, Jennifer finally allowed herself to feel the full, crushing weight of it all. The suddenness of it left Jennifer breathless, as if all the oxygen had been sucked from the room. Christopher's son, Daniel, who everyone believed lost to the ocean's depths, might be alive. His ex-wife, Victoria, Daniel's mother, A woman Jennifer had only ever seen in pictures, had reappeared, bringing with her not just a ghostly echo of the past, but an impossible, heart-stopping hope. The fragile, beautiful connection that had been blossoming between Jennifer and Christopher over the past 3 months, stolen glances, late-night conversations, the quiet understanding that had begun to mend places in her heart, she thought irrevocably broken. It couldn't possibly withstand this seismic shift. She felt a bitter, self-mocking laugh rise in her throat. A fool. She'd been an absolute fool to believe in fairy tales. Her phone buzzed, a jarring vibration against her clammy palm. It was Christopher. Asterisk, please don't disappear. I need you. Asterisk, the words, meant to reassure, felt like a cruel irony. Jennifer knew better. He didn't need her now. He needed Victoria. He needed to chase this phantom hope, to discover if his son, his lost boy, was truly out there. He needed his old life back, or at the very least the tantalizing possibility of it. Jennifer had always been good at survival. It was her default setting, forged in the crucible of foster care, the gnawing hunger of poverty, the sting of abandonment, and the fierce protectiveness of single motherhood. She had conquered so much. She could survive losing Christopher Montgomery, too. This was just another battlefield. She picked up Tyler from his after-school program, pulling him into an extra-long hug in the car, inhaling the scent of little boy, crayons, and playground dust. She held him close, a silent mantra echoing in her mind. Asterisk, I built a good life for us before him. I can do it again. Asterisk, that night, after Tyler was finally asleep, nestled safely in his bed, Jennifer stepped onto the small, cramped balcony of her new apartment. The city lights twinkled indifferently below, a vast, uncaring ocean of glass and concrete. There, in the cool, anonymous darkness, for the first time in what felt like years, Jennifer let herself cry. It wasn't just for Christopher, for the man she was falling so deeply in love with. It was for the fleeting, exquisite moment she had allowed herself to hope, to dream, to believe that someone might truly choose her, might stay, might build a future with her and Tyler that wasn't just about survival, but about joy. The dam she'd carefully constructed around her heart had burst, and the salty torrent of long-held grief and shattered dreams flowed freely. The next morning, the stark emptiness of Christopher's office was a physical blow. His regular assistant, Patricia, was nowhere to be found. Instead, a stiff, impeccably dressed woman from the executive floor, her expression carefully neutral, informed Jennifer that Mr. Montgomery had taken an immediate personal leave for urgent family matters. There was no timeline for his return. Jennifer nodded, a professional mask firmly in place, buried herself in the spreadsheets and reports piled high on her desk. She ignored the fleeting, pitying glances from colleagues who, with the uncanny speed of office gossip, had already somehow pieced together that the CEO, her presumed mentor, had abruptly vanished. Rumors, wild and inventive, swirled through Montgomery Financial Group like wildfire. Everything from a secret illness to a corporate scandal, whispered in hushed tones over coffee and in the elevator. Only Jennifer knew the truth, and she kept it locked away, a heavy secret pressed against her ribs. It joined all her other carefully honed survival skills, deep within her. 2 weeks bled into 3, and the silence from Christopher was absolute, deafening. Jennifer threw herself into work with an almost mechanical precision, a driven automaton fueled by a desperate need to not think, to not feel. She was the first to arrive, the last to leave, volunteering for every extra project Patricia, now acting team lead, assigned. At home, she was a meticulously present mother for Tyler, helping with homework, playing endless rounds of Candy Land, reading bedtime stories until her voice grew hoarse. But a hollow ache persisted inside her, a constant, gnawing void, waiting for news that never came. She told herself she was being utterly ridiculous. Christopher owed her nothing. Their brief, secret, intensely powerful connection had been entirely secondary to the possibility that his son might be alive. Of course, he'd chosen to focus on that. Any parent, any human would. Still, the silence, the utter lack of a single word, hurt more deeply than she would ever admit, even to herself. On a Thursday evening, Exactly 3 weeks after Victoria's devastating revelation, Jennifer was leaving the office, her briefcase heavy, her spirit heavier, when she spotted him. Christopher. He was waiting by her car in the parking garage, alone, familiar silhouette under the fluorescent hum. He looked utterly different, a stark shadow of the vibrant man she knew. Thinner, his usually sharp jawline now stark, his eyes sunken with profound exhaustion, dark smudges beneath them speaking volumes of sleepless nights. But there was something else in his expression, too, something she hadn't anticipated. A quiet, profound peace. Christopher, Jennifer breathed, her heart lurching violently against her ribs. 1,000 questions battled to escape, but one broke free. What? He's not Daniel? Christopher nodded slowly, his voice a quiet rasp. The boy Victoria saw was Lucas Brennan. We did the DNA test. He paused, a tremor running through his frame. He's not my son. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth, a sharp gasp escaping. Oh God, Christopher, I'm so sorry. Christopher shook his head, a slow, weary movement. Don't be. The test results were devastating, yes. A fresh wound, a new wave of grief. But they also gave me something I didn't realize I needed more than anything. His gaze met hers, raw and vulnerable. Closure. Real, definitive closure. He moved closer, and in the dim light of the garage, Jennifer could see the truth etched in the lines around his eyes, the subtle shift in his posture. He had been grieving, yes, that much was clear, but he had also been doing something more. Processing, accepting, letting go in a way he perhaps never truly had before. Victoria and I talked, he continued, his voice soft, almost a whisper. Really talked, for the first time since the divorce, since Daniel. Since that day. We both realized we'd been holding on to a sliver of desperate hope that our son might somehow come back, that the nightmare might be reversible. Seeing Lucas, believing for a moment, then facing the truth. It forced us to confront Daniel's death in a way we'd both avoided for years. Christopher's voice cracked then, a raw, painful sound. My son is gone. He's been gone for 4 years, and I need to honor his memory by actually living again, Jennifer. Not just existing. Tears streamed down Jennifer's face, a silent testament to her empathy, her understanding of his profound journey. I'm so glad you have closure, Christopher. You deserve peace. I disappeared on you, Christopher said, his voice heavy with guilt. I left without explanation, without even a proper conversation. Victoria showed up and I just collapsed inward. I'm sorry, Jennifer. You deserved better. You were dealing with an impossible situation, Jennifer said, though the words felt like sandpaper scraping her throat. Your ex-wife, the possibility of your son being alive. Of course, that took priority. I understood. Christopher stepped closer, his hand reaching up, warm and gentle, to cup her cheek. His thumb stroked softly, sending shivers down her spine. Did you? He asked, his gaze piercing. Because I spent 3 weeks thinking about what matters, about what I want my life to look like, what a real, meaningful life would entail. And every single scenario I imagined, every future I could conceive of, included you. And Tyler. Jennifer's breath hitched, trapped somewhere deep in her chest. I love you, he said simply, his voice low and unwavering, a powerful anchor in her turbulent world. I'm in love with you, Jennifer Hayes. With your incredible strength, your fierce devotion to your son, and the way you make me want to be better than I am, kinder, more present, more alive. He paused, his eyes searching hers. I know it's complicated. I know people will talk about the CEO dating his employee. I know you're terrified of depending on anyone, of trusting someone enough to build a real foundation. But I'm asking you to take a chance on us anyway. On me. On a future that's more than just survival. Jennifer's mind raced, a torrent of 1,000 objections, each one a stark reminder of her past, her fears, the glaring power imbalance, the inevitable office politics, the terrifying risk of everything falling apart and losing not just Christopher, but her job, her hard-won stability, Tyler's security. It was all so precarious. But then, she thought about the past 3 months, the stolen moments that had slowly, irrevocably changed her world. Christopher, laughing freely, building sandcastles with Tyler, his hands covered in grit, his face alight with simple joy. Quiet dinners where they talked for hours, sharing vulnerabilities, dreams, and the mundane details of their days, making her feel seen, truly seen and valued. For the first time in her adult life, she thought of Tyler, asking with innocent hope, "When will Mr. Chris visit again?" Of how her son had started sleeping better, laughing more, blossoming under the gentle, consistent attention of a kind male figure. And she thought about Christopher's profound words about actually living instead of just surviving. Could she truly ask for that? "I love you, too," Jennifer whispered, the words of fragile confession, heavy with emotion. "I've been terrified to admit it, to even let myself feel it, but I do." Christopher's entire face transformed with a blinding rush of relief and pure, unadulterated joy. He pulled her close, crushing her against him, then kissed her. It was a kiss of overwhelming tenderness, of fierce love, of all the unspoken words and emotions that had built between them. A kiss that stole her breath and made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing through their tears, tears of pain and healing, of fear and soaring hope. "So what now?" Jennifer asked, a tentative smile gracing her lips. "You're still my boss. I still need this job." "You're being transferred," Christopher said, a slight, knowing smile playing at his lips, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Patricia has just been promoted to VP of Operations. A long overdue move, by the way. And you, Jennifer Hayes, are being moved to a new position, Director of Strategic Planning, reporting directly to the CFO instead of to me. Same floor, better office, and a significant $30,000 raise. The board approved it this afternoon." Jennifer's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't just—" "I didn't," Christopher interrupted gently, his smile widening. "Patricia recommended you for the promotion based on your exceptional work over the past 6 months, especially your leadership on the Xylos project. The CFO, he interviewed you last month for a different initiative, remember? He was incredibly impressed and specifically requested you for his team. I recused myself from the decision entirely. This is your merit, Jennifer. Your talent, your hard work, your brilliance speaking for itself. I just made sure the process happened quickly so we could move forward together." Jennifer's heart swelled, so full it felt it might burst. He had thought of everything. Protecting her career, eliminating the ethical concerns, ensuring she maintained her independence and professional standing. He saw her, truly saw her, as an equal. "There's something else," Christopher said, his voice turning nervous in a way she'd never heard before, a vulnerability that softened his strong features. "I want to meet Tyler officially, not as your boss who happens to visit sometimes or a friend, but as the man who is deeply in love with his mother and wants to be a consistent, loving part of both your lives. He asks about you constantly," Jennifer admitted, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "I think he's a little bit in love with you, too." "Then let's do this, right?" Christopher said, his hand gently squeezing hers. Slowly, carefully, making sure Tyler's comfortable every step of the way. "I'm not trying to replace his father, Jennifer, or rush into anything. I just want a chance. A chance to show you both that I'm serious about this. About us." 6 months later, Jennifer stood in Christopher's Beacon Hill townhouse, their townhouse now, though she still often marveled at the sheer improbability of it all. Through the window, she watched Christopher patiently teach Tyler to ride a bicycle in the secluded, sun-dappled private garden. Her son's joyous laughter echoed off the brick walls, pure and unfettered. The transition hadn't been easy, not entirely. Office gossip had been intense, a storm of speculation, until Jennifer's transfer became official, and her undeniable professional competence, her strategic brilliance, spoke for itself. Christopher's elite social circle had been skeptical at first, uncertain how to receive a single mother from Dorchester into their polished world. But Christopher had faced them down with quiet, unwavering resolve. Even Victoria had been surprisingly gracious, sending Jennifer a thoughtful, handwritten note thanking her for helping Christopher heal, a fragile, unexpected bridge built between their disparate lives. But they had navigated every obstacle together, a united front. Christopher, with his innate understanding of healing, had insisted on family therapy to ensure Tyler adjusted healthily and happily to their new relationship. Jennifer, fiercely protective of her autonomy, had maintained her financial independence, keeping her own bank account, contributing to household expenses despite Christopher's good-natured protests. They had established boundaries, painstakingly built trust, and created a life that honored both Jennifer's deep-seated need for autonomy and their burgeoning, profound love for each other. "Mama, look!" Tyler shouted, his voice filled with triumph, as he pedaled successfully for a glorious 10 feet before wobbling dangerously. Christopher, ever vigilant, caught him just before he could fall, both of them dissolving into laughter, their faces flushed with exertion and joy. Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. *board meeting went perfectly. That European expansion proposal you drafted was brilliant. Drinks Friday to celebrate your brilliance. Jennifer smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. Her career had flourished under the CFO's mentorship, a testament to her innate talent for strategic planning, a gift she'd never had the opportunity to explore before. Last month, she'd been invited to speak at a prominent Women in Finance conference about career advancement for single mothers, a role she embraced with pride and purpose. Christopher and Tyler came inside, both rosy-cheeked and beaming. Christopher wrapped his arms around Jennifer from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder, his warmth seeping into her. "I have something to ask you both," he said quietly, his voice a little softer than usual. Tyler looked up, his bright eyes wide with curiosity. Christopher pulled a small, dark velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a stunning, tastefully understated diamond ring that glittered in the afternoon light. "Jennifer Hayes," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've taught me that life continues after loss, that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that family isn't something you're just born into, but something you build, day by day, with courage and commitment. Will you marry me?" Jennifer's hands trembled uncontrollably as she looked at the dazzling ring, then at Christopher's hopeful, earnest face, and finally at Tyler, bouncing excitedly beside them, his eyes alight with anticipation. "Say yes, Mama," Tyler urged, his small voice bursting with conviction. "Then Mr. Chris can be my real dad." Jennifer laughed through her tears, a joyful, overflowing sound. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." Christopher slipped the ring onto her trembling finger, then lifted Tyler high, so all three of them could embrace. A tangle of happy tears, laughter, and overwhelming love. In that moment, surrounded by the two people who had, against all odds, become her entire world, Jennifer felt something she'd searched for her whole life finally settle into place. A deep, abiding sense of belonging. She'd spent her childhood in foster care, convinced she didn't deserve permanence, that any attachment would inevitably be severed. She'd spent years as a single mother, certain she had to do everything alone, to shoulder every burden. She'd almost walked away from Christopher, terrified to believe in happy endings, convinced they were only for others. But sometimes Jennifer realized true fairy tales did come true. Not because a billionaire rescued a struggling single mother, but because two broken people found the courage to heal, together. Because love meant showing up, authentically and consistently, even when it was complicated, messy, and hard. Because family meant choosing each other, every single day, with intention and unwavering heart. 3 months later, they married in a small, intimate ceremony overlooking the ocean, on the very same beach where Christopher had first built sandcastles with Tyler. Victoria attended, bringing Daniel's favorite toy dinosaur as a wedding gift, a poignant, unexpected gesture of blessing and healing that brought tears to both Christopher and Jennifer's eyes. Tyler served as ring bearer, proudly announcing to anyone who would listen that he was getting the best dad ever. Christopher legally adopted him 6 months after the wedding, and Tyler Brennan Hayes Montgomery declared it, unequivocally, the best day of his life. Jennifer never forgot her laptop that fateful day at Montgomery Financial Group, but she remained forever profoundly grateful that she had. Because that single mundane moment of forgetfulness had led to everything that truly mattered. Love, family, and the radical, empowering notion that she, Jennifer Hayes, deserved both. As she stood years later in her spacious, sunlit home office, now the esteemed VP of Strategic Development, watching Christopher teach their daughter, Caroline, named after his beloved mother, to walk in the blooming garden while Tyler practiced a complex piano piece in the living room, Jennifer understood something profound and deeply true. She hadn't needed rescuing. She'd needed someone who saw her strength, not her struggles, and loved her fiercely for it. Someone who understood that the best relationships weren't about completion, but about two already whole people choosing to become even better together. And that, she thought as Christopher looked up, catching her eye through the window, and smiled his knowing, radiant smile, was the real fairy tale all along.